Hey everybody, today we're going to explore the fourth largest language family, the Austronesian language family. A while back somebody asked me to talk about the Polynesian languages because they are very interesting, but I thought that first I would talk about the broader family that contains the Polynesian languages. So the Austronesian language family is geographically huge. Most of its speakers are in Malaysia and Indonesia and the Philippines. However, there's also languages on Taiwan. There's languages, just a few in Vietnam. There's Madagascar, and then all of the Pacific Ocean. Now, what's crazy about this language family is the first time that it was ever written down, like in any Austronesian language, that any word was written, was in the year 600 AD in Vietnam. However, through archaeology and linguistic theory and kind of genetics, linguists have determined that the origin point for the Austronesian language family is in Taiwan. So I'm going to start with the linguistic reasons that they believe that. There are, according to who you talk, depending on who you talk to, about 13 branches of the Austronesian language family, 9 of which are on Taiwan. The languages in Taiwan that are Austronesian are very diverse in relation to each other. So there's this theory that's been used for about a half century to 3/4 of a century now, that the more diverse parts of a language are closer to its origin. So think about this like English is a good way to think about it. Somebody from New York can talk to somebody from LA, and that's thousands of miles apart, very easily, with very little difficulty in understanding each other. Whereas somebody in London might have trouble talking to somebody from northern Scotland, even if they're speaking English, and that's only 400 miles away. Now, I know that modern times, modern education, modern media has changed that, and I know that seems like a bit of an overgeneralization, but this is a pattern that you can see in France, in Spain, and how it relates to the Francophone world and the Spanish-speaking world. Gentle reminder, in World War I, there were soldiers from southern France that couldn't speak to soldiers from northern France. Okay, back to Austronesian. The archaeology backs up this linguistic theory of the Taiwan origin. About 3000 BC, the Austronesian peoples were the first people to create boats that could survive the ocean. And they started moving around all over the islands in the Pacific. It took them a while to get to the Polynesian parts because that's much further away, but I'm talking about the Philippines, Indonesia, and getting to Madagascar, was because these people were the first people that had boats that were this good. And looking at the archaeology, you can see that when people arrived to these islands, and kind of in what order, and you can tell that they all have the same general culture based on archaeology. But while we're talking about the origins of a language family, just to give you a piece of linguistic vocabulary, linguists call that an Urheimat, which is German basically for origin place, or original place. I wonder why the Germans thought that was so important to come up with a word for it. That must have been a pretty integral part to what they thought about the world around them, and how important their Urheimat was. Anyway, there was a theory that the Urheimat of the Austronesians was in the Sahel, which was a landmass that, there used to be a land bridge between the island of Borneo and Thailand, basically, when the oceans were lower, the same time that there was the Bering Land Bridge. But that has been disproven. by genetics mostly, that they started in Taiwan and moved on from there. And they got to Taiwan from mainland China. That'll come into, that'll be a little bit more important later. Now, how do we know that the Austronesian languages are related? That's something I've talked about a few times on this channel, whether or not these languages that linguists say are related are actually related. So, the common themes between every Austronesian language, of course, they have a handful of cognate words, numbers, dog, eye, hand, you know what I'm saying? There's also, in general, a lower amount of phonemes in Austronesian languages in comparison to other languages of the world. They are also notably not tonal. Other languages in East Asia are tonal, such as the Sinitic languages in China and the language family that's in Thailand that I can't remember the name of. I think it's Kra Pai. I'll look it up and put it in the as a caption later. But point is, the Austronesian languages are not tonal. They also have a similar phonotactic scheme to each other. So remember, phonotactics is the general trend of how words are built in relation to their consonant vowel patterns. And Austronesian languages will generally have consonant, vowel, consonant. They'll end in consonants, start with consonants. And if they have a consonant cluster, it tends to be in the middle of the word. So that specific pattern is followed by every Austronesian language. Now, naturally, with any language family that isn't very well documented, there's going to be some speculation as to whether or not it's related to other language families that are directly next to it. Every single language family in East Asia has some theory of how it could be related to the Austronesian language family. There's really no way to prove or disprove them very easily, because the biggest crux in understanding Austronesian language history is that there's no written Austronesian language history. Even that language in Vietnam that was written is like an offshoot of the original Austronesian language. We do have a Proto-Austronesian. It's based on like the closest similarities between those Taiwanese languages. But the oldest record that we have is so far from that like it's not really helpful in understanding the proto-language. So it's not helpful in understanding the history of that language. However, put a pin in this, because I kind of want to talk about something in a later video. And I think it's a theory I've heard before. It's a theory I'm going to dig into, and I'm going to bring some evidence towards it. Stay tuned. Anyway, I'm going to cut this here. That's pretty much all you need to know about the Austronesian language family. Tune in next time when I talk about the Polynesian languages and their interesting language and history that I think is cooler than the Austronesians personally. Thank you very much for watching Linking. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and have a great day. Bye-bye.